Boom. We are live for episode 69, I believe, of our top, I guess, Star Trek comfort foods. We're going to get
Yeah,
into what makes an episode a comfort food episode here in a bit. How are you doing this morning, Bill? Or
this
not this
morning.
morning, this afternoon. Jeez.
This evening for
This
me.
evening. Yeah.
Doing pretty good.
Yeah.
We were just talking about before we went live that this is just completely different, as evidenced by that right there.
Yeah. It's just straight habit mode, like
Yes.
autopilot, but yeah.
Yeah, we're used to doing this in the mornings, and we did it in the evenings a few times, especially when Discovery was on. We tried to do it like at night, a few nights after the show aired.
Mhm.
But this is a totally different time than usual, so it's going to be interesting. I'm, interested to see how it flows. Different
Mhm.
time, different night. We've never done a Friday before.
Yeah.
But here we are. We're happy to be here. We weren't here last weekend, I don't think, right?
Nope. We had the last weekend off.
Yeah. But yeah, we're glad to be here. We have some cool topics in the works for the rest of the year. We have pretty good stuff coming, and up until the end of the year. And then once we get into 2019, Discovery is pretty much right around the corner of season 2 for 13 straight weeks. So feeling really good about, the future and what we have coming up.
Yeah.
So yeah, looking forward to diving into this topic.
Yes.
And everything else that we have coming in the near future. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't point out that this is a topic that we were kind of inspired to jump onto by Trek Ranks.
Gotta get that out of the way first.
Yes.
Thing. Yeah.
We're looking at this as our official on the record response to that episode.
Yep.
It was their first full episode over there at Trek Ranks. And they did this sort of topic. What makes it a comfort food episode? What makes a comfort food episode, and what are your favorites? Like, what are your go-tos? However you define that. And over here in the United States, it was just Thanksgiving, and comfort food's a big deal. So it all just made sense. And we figured we'd take advantage and go to town on this topic. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to diving into it. I have some ideas. I have a good handful of episodes that I kind of want to mention. And yeah, look forward to it. What's been going on with your rewatch? Have you?
I don't know. For some reason, it's been feeling really flat, and I probably need some tips and something to help me get out of this funk. Because I'm just not, I don't know, motivated, excited to watch, participate in my rewatch. I know it happens a lot. So if you guys have any tips of how you guys get out of this funk, definitely let me know. Yeah. What about you? How's your rewatch going?
Almost similar to yours. I'm taking my time. I've mentioned this in the last few shows that we've kind of talked about our rewatches, and I'm purposely kind of taking a different tact, going a little slower and not, devouring episodes in bulk. And it's intentional, but I think it's also kind of like, I don't want to say, I don't know if it's a funk or if it's I don't know what it is, but it feels right for this go around. So I'm kind of taking my time with it, letting the episodes breathe a little bit. I'm towards the back end of season 2 of TOS. I watched a couple between last night and today. I'm sure I'll watch a few more this weekend. But yeah, really enjoying it, as I always do. But I'm definitely taking it a lot slower than I tend to when I do this, or at least the last few times. The advice I would give you is don't pressure yourself to watch. Don't feel like if it feels like a chore, it probably is. Don't force feed it. And on top of that, if you're feeling like you need something to re-energize you, don't necessarily stick to the plan with the rewatch. Like if there's something that you want to revisit, if it's I know Voyager's your sort of
go-to
ground zero kind of Star Trek show, go back and get some Voyager in you and see if that gets you excited to dive back into the rewatch. Pick a movie or something, change it up a little bit. Don't necessarily stick right to the plan if you're feeling like you need to change pace. So yeah, but what are you is there an episode you're kind of hanging on? Is there like, what do you, what's your status? I'm curious.
Bill and I talked about this kind of pre-show. I'm watching. I tried to watch some Star Trek today. I watched The Host, and I don't know. It was a little tough to get through, and I wasn't feeling it, and so I stopped, like somewhere in the middle, and I'll get back to it. But yeah, some episodes are just tougher than others for sure. So
I sort of find that interesting in that you're usually one to respond to like the more romantic drama style episodes.
Exactly. Yep.
And The Host is in that box of Star Trek romances.
Yeah.
It's unorthodox and it's kind of wacky and crazy. I kind of like it. It's not one that I've always liked. You know, I definitely struggled with it in my earlier days as a Star Trek fan when I was a kid. But it's grown on me a little bit. I think Frakes is pretty good in it. I like Dr. Crusher. She doesn't always get a whole lot to do, so I always kind of enjoy it when she does.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting that it wasn't necessarily grabbing you. Like I said, given the love stories tend to.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess let's just dive right into it. We've kind of covered our rewatches, talked about where we stand, giving people a couple minutes to filter into here, into the chat room. But I guess we should start off by kind of defining what comfort food Trek kind of means to you. Like, how would you define that?
For me, it was an episode where I could go back and watch it like a million times, and I still would, get, because I guess I'm just comfortable with it, and they're not necessarily, the greatest. They're not necessarily, Star Trek episodes, so to speak, but they're episodes that kind of
go down easy.
Yeah, go down easy and kind of resonate with me in some way. So that's how I kind of define my comfort food episodes. What about you?
Yeah, I think rewatchability plays a big factor for me. Episodes that I'd never really get tired of. Episodes that I can find myself rewatching, even if I've seen it fairly recently. Like if I feel like I just watched this like a few weeks or a few months ago, if I kind of am like, I don't need this. That is kind of like an automatic disqualifier. It's got to be something that, proximity, as far as like how recently I've watched it, doesn't really factor. I think for me, it's usually gonna be an episode of a certain type. When I think of comfort food episodes, I don't think of episodes like the shoot from Voyager. Like that's not an incredibly comfortable episode. Episodes like that, episodes like Memorial from Voyager. Yeah. If they're grimy and brutal and emotionally exhausting, unpleasant, even if they're really good. Like I love the shoot. I love Memorial. For two Voyager
great
examples.
Episodes.
Episodes like The Quickening from Deep Space Nine. I love that episode, but it's not pleasant. No. It's not fun to watch. So they're kind of in a different box than this conversation. So I'm definitely kind of eliminating episodes like that. But yeah, rewatchability. Some of them might not necessarily be, like you said, like the most quintessentially Trek episodes. They're going to be episodes that speak to me, like you said. This is definitely an objective kind of conversation. It's completely based on the person. And I think I said this to Jim in a Twitter exchange when we kind of announced this topic. I think, but I definitely would say that this is a really cool topic to ask any Star Trek fan, because I think it reveals a lot about like what their fandom sort of is. Like what do they kind of respond to their core, if we're talking about rewatchability and ease of kind of going back to it, how easily they go down. That hearing what kind of episodes do that for you tells people, I think, who know Star Trek and know the ins and outs of it, what sort of fan you are, what you respond to.
Yeah, the thing that I love about having such a wide gamut of episodes to choose from is that this list or these episodes that I'm about to mention can change. You know, sometimes you know, comfort episode that I'm looking for to feel comfortable. Maybe I'm looking for a laugh. I'm looking for, you know, something sci-fi, something like that. So that's what I love. So I mean, tomorrow this episode list is probably gonna be different, but
yeah, I agree with that too. My group of episodes would almost certainly change with like rewatches. Like each time I kind of go through it, I may, you know, change my mind on some of these, you know, for just ease of, you know, watching, you know, some kind of rise and fall, depending on, you know, how I responded to them the last time around. Some of them are maybe a little more constant and probably aren't ever going to change, but some that I'm going to talk about very well could and probably have over the years. So I guess I'll ask you first, like what's the first, is there a first episode that kind of comes to mind for you? For comfort food.
Like the first one that came to mind, or kind of
what's the first one you want to talk about?
First one I want to talk about, since I'm in TNG, I'm going to start with TNG. It's A Matter of Honor. And to me, it kind of has a great, I don't know how to explain it, but to me it feels comfortable. I feel comfortable because I love Riker's character, and I love Klingon culture and stuff like that. And to me, this is so that, and it appeals to me, and I can watch it 1,000 times and still love it every time. Yeah.
Makes perfect sense to me. I know you love Riker, and I know you love the Klingons.
Yeah.
So just knowing you, that's a pretty natural pick. It sort of checks all the boxes for things that you love about that show, especially TNG.
Yeah.
But that's a really good pick, and I find that one didn't come to mind for me, but that's definitely an episode that whenever I kind of either I hit it in a rewatch, or if I stumble on it on TV, or you know somebody in the house might be watching it, I always kind of stop and I'm like, I love this episode. It's one that does not get old. So while it's not one that didn't like pop into my mind immediately when I started thinking about this topic, and it's not one that I mentioned, I love that you did, because it's so you. And on top of that, it made me, you know, take a step back and go, yeah, that's one I think that I could probably go to as well. Yeah. So cool. Definitely a good pick.
Yes.
Interesting. For me, I think the first thing that came to mind for me when I really started thinking about this time around was Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. That to me is like quintessential, like feel good Star Trek. That's saying a rare Benzite appearance. Yes, the Benzite in Matter of Honor is another cool element that is unique to that episode and is something. It's just a cool piece of Star Trek. I love that character. I love that species. So that's a cool mention too. But yeah, The Voyage Home for me is like quintessentially good, feel good Star Trek. It always makes me feel good when it's over. I love the message of it. There's nothing about it that sort of doesn't resonate in a way that doesn't make me feel good. Like Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3, while they're awesome, and they're 2 especially is like quintessential Star Trek to me, like top of the top in terms of just flat out quality from my perspective. It doesn't necessarily leave you feeling good at the end of it. Like it's not, you know, you fans like us know what happens, so it's not like an ultimate gut punch every time. You know what's going to happen. But 4 is definitely it's like a warm blanket, you know, like it's got the humor, it's got the positive message, the characters are doing good things, and it ends in a place that is pretty undeniably feel good. So when I thought of comfort food Star Trek, I'm pretty sure this was a couple weeks ago now, but I'm pretty sure The Voyage Home was sort of like the flash, like, yeah, that's the thing that is like top of the heap, if we're talking comfort food for me. The score, it's got like this comfortable vibe to it that never gets old. And it gets better with age, I think. I think it's aged really well. Things like, I think the visual effects in it hold up really well. I'm talking like production stuff here, not necessarily comfort food stuff, but it all plays into, you know, why I love it so much and why going back to it it just seems to get better and better. I think the visual effects have really stood the test of time with the whales and the stuff with the bird of prey coming down into the Earth atmosphere at the end, crashing under the Golden Gate Bridge. You know, the cinematography. I think like the stuff on the bird of prey looks really cool. It was Oscar nominated for cinematography, which is kind of a weird Star Trek piece of trivia. Like that's a pretty high level like Academy Award nomination that Star Trek doesn't tend to get, and it did in that particular case. So yeah, Star Trek 4 for me.
That's a great pick, and I'm kind of kicking myself that I didn't pick that because you're totally right in all regards. If I could go back, maybe I'd add that to my list. But yeah, that's a great pick. I have kind of a similar pick to me. I'll talk about it later though.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Rob's saying that it has to be the Undiscovered Country for him, and he's definitely on the record. Guest, obviously, anybody that comes to our shows knows Rob, and Undiscovered Country always comes up as a big time favorite for Rob. Drama, political intrigue, humor, feel good factor with the crew's final voyage. Great actors. Yeah, 6 is a great pick. That maybe, just maybe, we'll touch on later. I don't know. We'll see. But if not, Rob, you brought it to the table and got it mentioned on the show.
Yeah.
So, Undiscovered Country is a good pick. You got another one, Dan? What's your next on your list?
I tried to kind of spread it out evenly. There's a few shows and movies that I left out. This one's from Enterprise, and I don't know why, but it's The Catwalk.
Okay.
I really, I think it was just a fun, kind of different episode. The crew gets to be, bunked up pretty tight and just fun, and yeah. To me, I don't know. I don't know why, but this one came to mind when I tried to think of like, okay, Enterprise kind of episodes that I can just watch over and over again, and this came up. So
I love that you mentioned that because it kind of goes hand in hand with something I'm going to talk about in a bit. Maybe I can segue into that episode and build it off of this in a second. But I think that casualness kind of plays a part for me too. Getting to see the crew in more kind of laid back situations, and in the Catwalk, you definitely do. That's like Enterprise's maybe one time outside of like the occasional stopping into like movie night kinds of situations where the crew's not necessarily doing a whole lot. They're kind of just hanging out and waiting out the storm, so to speak. They're bunked up, like you said, in the Catwalk and in close quarters and rubbing up against each other and getting to know each other better than they maybe had before. But it strikes a chord with that casualness that some other episodes of Star Trek occasionally also do. And I think it's like maybe, like I said, the one time Enterprise kind of really spends time in that territory. So is that kind of something that drew you to that episode, that casualness?
Yeah, the casualness, because or like just the everyday aspect. I mean, because I feel like a lot of the times these episodes are like really big, high concept. The crew's doing a lot of stuff, not doing their everyday, day in, day out stuff. So that's why this is kind of a comfort food episode for me. So
yeah, that's a really good pick. I like Catwalk a lot. It's especially the first half of it. I think the before like the alien takeover of the ship happens and they get into some of that kind of typical Star Trek stuff. Everything that's happening in the Catwalk up until that point is kind of gold to me, and it is comfortable because you're kind of getting comfortable with the crew in like a relaxing, not relaxing. They're not relaxing at all. They're miserable. But not doing their day to day. They're in this episode. They're not even really doing their day to day. I get what you're saying. That in a lot of times in Trek, you're not necessarily watching them do their grinding day to day work. You're watching them do like extraordinary things to get out of these crazy situations. In this episode, they can't even do their day to day work. They're kind of shelved away, so to speak. So, yeah, I love that you picked that. I love that you picked an Enterprise episode. That's going to make me happy. I do have something from Enterprise to mention in a bit. But I'll segue with the casualness. to an episode of TNG called Lessons, which we've talked about before with Jim Morehouse of Trek Ranks.
Yeah.
It was one of our debate episodes when he was on for episode 50. I love Lessons. Lessons is the episode when with Picard starting a romance with the science officer on the ship, a lieutenant commander, Neela Darren. And that episode, I think, kind of covers a lot of that same ground. It's not an episode where they are dealing with any like huge cosmic threat. There's no like Romulan invasion, on the horizon. They don't have these big, huge stakes really happening until the very end, where they go to rescue a colony, and it puts the relationship, in tense situations. But it's really about the sort of the casualness of running the ship. It's got things like, how Picard's relationship with Darren affects Riker. Darren's kind of operating on an island because she assumes that she's going to get what she wants and doesn't necessarily go to Riker for things like, I need power in the astrometrics lab at 0 to 300 hours to do this experiment. And it spends time on things like that, and how a relationship at the top affects, the down the line. And that's the thing that I think I respond to the most in that episode, is getting a sense of that casual existence on the ship, not necessarily seeing them do the extraordinary stuff, but the more day-to-day monotonous sort of stuff that living life on a starship would be all about. And Thad agrees with Lessons, and he's talking about Cutler and Phlox and Dear Doctor, but the A-plot keeps it from being a comfort food episode for him because that's pretty heavy stuff, I'm assuming. And he's responding to Rob, who is mentioning Dear Doctor as an Enterprise choice for a comfort food episode. But that's another one that's like a kind of a cute relationship that I think between Cutler and Phlox is kind of similar to Lessons, with little love story. But yeah, it looks like Rob also loves Lessons. I'm definitely on Team Darren. It's a definitely a hashtag on Twitter. People kind of battle: is it Team Darren or is it Team Vash or is it Team Crusher for Picard? And I love the Neela Darren dynamic with Picard. And it's because of all that stuff I just mentioned. Casual day-to-day life on the ship and how it gets affected.
Yeah, Lessons is a great pick. I have to agree with that. I love the human kind of realness that brings it to the ship and to the show. That's I love that. That's a great pick.
Yeah, that's something that I can't get enough of. Don't get a whole lot of it in Trek. It's kind of it's sparingly there, and when it's there, it really stands out. And I've always been a big fan of Lessons for that. In addition to Lessons is a great episode. It's got cool continuity stuff with the Inner Light, where he's kind of opening up for the first time about this experience he had with the probe, and in that episode where he lives this other life and grows an appreciation for music in a whole different way, and that all that stuff's there. It's got cool continuity. Got a great performance from Patrick Stewart. Like all the good stuff's there too. It's not just just a comfort food episode. It's not one of these episodes that I would say is maybe not like an ultimate favorite, or not quintessential Star Trek. I think it's got all that great stuff in it as well, in addition to just being comfortable. What about you? What do you got next?
So the next one I'd like to talk about is a TOS episode. This is one of the first episodes that kind of came to mind when I thought of comfort food episodes. For me, it's Arena. I love this episode because to me it has that charm and everything that TOS brings to the table that the other shows kind of, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but don't bring to. I don't know why. I love this episode, and
it's got a unique charm to it. Yeah, it's got a real charm to it. That it's one that kind of embraces the agedness of the show. Like the Gorn is such a, we've talked about it before. The Gorn is such a cool yet retro yet corny. Like you can X so many boxes on like what the Gorn is. And it's such a quintessential Trek. Kirk on a planet, mano a mano with with something or someone. But at the end of the day, he's not. it's not about killing the bad guy. Like, it's got all the classic Trek stuff.
Yeah. It's and that's what I love, and that's why it's a comfort food for me, because it does, for me, the comfort is in the corniness and the the cheesiness of it. That's why I love it. So
you're not alone. Arena is an episode that you see cited a lot as like an all-time favorite. If you ask people what's your favorite TOS episode, Arena gets mentioned a lot. It's a common pick for best. So I think it's definitely a good pick for comfort food, and I would say it is for me too. It's definitely an episode that I loved even more as a kid. So there's a nostalgia factor there for me. I watched the crap out of that episode when I was young for all those reasons, and it still works on all those levels too. As an adult, but it definitely carries a lot of memories as well for me. For me, a TOS episode that I wanted to mention, in addition to the Voyage Home, which I guess would sort of count as TOS too. The Doomsday Machine for me is like ultimate comfort food. It's not an easy light episode by any extent, by any means. It's pretty tense and exciting, but I think it's so well done and it's so well paced that it just flies by. The hour goes by really quick. It's just got it all. It's if we're talking about rewatchability, I could watch the Doomsday Machine every week, for the rest of my life, and I wouldn't get tired of it. It's quintessential Trek, and it's also very comfortable. It covers everything for me. It's got quotable stuff from Decker and like whole exchanges between Decker and Spock and Kirk over the intercom, fighting over who's going to command the ship, like stuff, like passages of dialogue that I'll like know on my deathbed and be able to like mention. Like I'll be able to recite stuff from this episode. It's the quintessential like rewatchable episode of TOS for me. More so than like The City on the Edge Forever, which I talk about a lot as like my favorite episode of all time. But it's a pretty emotional episode, and it's pretty heavy stuff. And the Doomsday Machine's heavy in its own kind of way too, but it's like a rip-roaring sci-fi action adventure story. It's not nearly like the dramatic heavyweight in the same way, at least, that The City on the Edge Forever is, or even maybe like The Devil in the Dark kind of is too. It's got a little bit of a lighter action adventure tone than you sometimes get in TOS. So how do you feel about the Doomsday Machine?
I like it. I love it. It's a great pick. It's not necessarily a comfort food for me, but I will admit that it is a great episode, and it does, like you said, it has everything. So great pick.
Cool. Yeah. Very good. What's up next for you? You got anything else?
I got two left, and I'll save kind of my big spiel for the last pick.
Okay.
But you guys know I'm a big Voyager guy, and I feel like I mentioned this episode probably like every other episode of this show. When I need to laugh, when I need to cry, when I need to just, I don't know, feel something, I pop this on, and it's such a comfort food for me because I can pop it on anytime, rewatch it anytime, no matter what I'm feeling. I'm feeling sad, feeling happy. It's just great. So I'm gonna go with someone to watch over me, which Bill probably already is coming, and some of you guys in chat.
Definitely did.
To me, this episode has a lot going for it too. It has a great, this rom-com thing, which you guys know I love. It has great performances, like everybody on cast, and this is a comfort food for me.
I think it's first off, it's the most Daniel episode of Star Trek.
Yeah.
It's exactly your episode. So it's not a surprise at all that you picked it. Makes perfect sense. But it also fits in the box with Lessons and what's the other one we were talking about earlier with the Catwalk. Like casualness stuff. It's day-to-day stuff. Like her big concern is, who do I date? She's not doing her usual stuff. I love it for all those reasons too. That knows. Anybody that knows you, I think, knows that's going to be a big one for you. But yeah, I love that it's in keeping with sort of the themes that we're kind of hitting on here, with casualness, and I think that goes to show that that's something that at least you and I kind of really respond to when it comes to like what makes really consumable Star Trek easy to go back to, like what makes a comfort food episode. It's got if it has that sort of element, it's probably gonna fit. But like you said, it's got it all. I mean, it's got a great performance from both Jerry Ryan and Robert Picardo. They're both awesome. It is light, it's romantic comedy, but at the end, it's got a real dramatic punch to it. It's got a sneaky dramatic punch to it. A lot of the humor really works. It's legitimately funny. The stuff with the alien ambassador driving Neelix insane is legitimately funny. Like it's got really good comedy that works. And it's another one that has really good pacing. The episode flies by. It's like blinking, it's over. So makes perfect sense. It's not on my list, but I kind of knew you were going to pick it, so it was an easy one for me to skate away from. My Voyager pick that I wanted to mention is Tinker Tenor Dr. Spy. I love that episode. It's one of my favorite Star Trek comedies. I love the ECH. I love and I've talked about this episode a lot. I think I covered it a good bit when I got to this point in my rewatch a while back. It's got some weight to it. It's got some chops dramatically. In terms of, well, I guess if you're willing to look for it, it's a pretty front and center comedy. But I'm always kind of surprised by the awkwardness of what's kind of happening to the Doctor, the horror of having your daydreams dissected by kind of everybody that you know. Is pretty rough stuff. But the comedy works so well. It's another one that has a lot of casual stuff in it for a good portion of the episode. They don't know that there's any kind of threat. They're just kind of doing their thing. The Doctor's filling his kind of boredom with these daydreams. It's in a weird way. It's kind of a holodeck episode, but not really. The Doctor's doing, he's a hologram, so going to the holodeck for him isn't necessarily going to do much for him, I guess. So he's looking for the escape that he needs, which is a simple thing for us, is kind of daydreaming and the ability to kind of let your mind wander. So it's got all these like cool, interesting things to think about, and kind of like someone to watch over me. It's got comedy that legitimately works, and keeps the episode moving, and it's a unique kind of Voyager animal. It's one of the few, along with Someone to Watch Over Me, comedy heavy episodes from that series. One that really works. So Rob is mentioning What's Past Prologue from Discovery.
Great pick. Goosebumps.
It's a great pick. And I'll be honest, that's probably the episode of Discovery that I've gone back and just like casually put on maybe the most. And it's not the one I picked, which is kind of bizarre. So I may have to amend myself. I did pick a Discovery episode that I'm going to talk about in a second, but it's not that one. But it probably should be, because if I'm being honest with myself, that's the one that I actually had gone back and watched the most. So that's a great choice. He's also mentioning Rascals, which is a really silly kind of unique episode of Trek. That's comfortable. It's got a lot of casual stuff in it too. Before the hostile Ferengi takeover of the ship. Dad's mentioning Bride of Chaotica, an episode that
was a close. I almost picked that also. I love that episode.
Yeah, that one gets better every time I watch it. And Rob is just now mentioning the one that I did pick for Discovery, which is Magic to Make the Saints Man Go Mad, the Harry Mudd time loop episode. And I kind of went with that because if we're talking, if I want to pick a Discovery episode, I'm at this point probably going to go with the Discovery episode that reminds me the most of the Trek classic that I kind of grew up with. And that's the one that I think captures that sense. And that's an episode that kind of fits with I think what we both said at the beginning. Like for me, I know for a lot of people, Magic to Make the Saints Man Go Mad is like the classic Discovery episode of the first season, like the cream of the crop. And for me, it's not. I like it a lot, and it's in my upper half. but it's not necessarily my favorite episode of the season. But it probably is the most comfortable. The reason I think I probably went with that instinctively over What's Past Is Prologue, which I probably watch more often, is What's Past Is Prologue is some heavy stuff. Like there's a lot of dark stuff happening in it. And it's awesome because it's like the culmination of a lot of things coming together in that show, which makes it really satisfying. But Magic to Make the Saints Man Go Mad is just casual, like fun Star Trek. And in the middle of this season, it's like directly in the middle of this 15 episode season, you get this kind of like breath of fresh air where they're, you know, dealing with like an independent, you know, problem that's isolated from the war. And it's like old school Trek. I always kind of mention that I love, in my mind at least, like there's this little moment at the end when they beam Harry Mudd, Stella off the ship. Like they've kind of ridded themselves of the problem. They kind of low key bring in like the old school Star Trek theme. And to me, it's like, this is the ship kind of like coming together. The crew's like working together as a unit. They're all kind of doing their jobs for the first time, operating as a crew to solve like a one-off problem. And that music coming in at that point is kind of like signaling, yeah, this is becoming Trek in that sense. So things like that kind of always kind of bring me back to that episode, even though it's not necessarily my favorite from that season, from that show so far. I mean, I think you had indicated before that you didn't pick a Discovery episode, but I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you, like, if I told you you had to pick an episode from each show, what would you pick from Discovery?
I probably would have picked Magic to Make the Saints Man Go Mad because, although I'm with you, it's not an episode that I'm like the highest on or anything like that, but it does have checks kind of all my boxes for making it kind of like a comfort food episode for me. I can rewatch it many times. I love the performance from everyone. Yeah, so I would have to go with that episode, but.
Yeah, that's why I picked it. I love the performances. I love the structure of it. I think it's a really well paced episode, which is kind of an amazing thing given how often it's kind of
jumping around,
finding new ways to repeat sort of the same sorts of scenes. I think it does a really good job of like cause and effect did, you know, making that work really well. It makes sense to me. Rob's talking about a couple other episodes. He's got Favorite Son, which is a really interesting pick. Think Tank and Dragon's Teeth, which are two episodes that are interesting. He's Rob's definitely a huge Voyager guy like you. So it does not surprise me that a lot of his episodes that he always goes back to are Voyager. Dad says the last 15 minutes of Will You Take My Hand, which is actually a really good pick too.
Great pick.
I think I agree with that. I'm not the hugest fan of that episode as a finale as a whole, but I agree with you that the thing that really elevates it is that last 15 minutes, the ending of it, the way they sort of wrap it up, really does work for me as like classic Star Trek stuff. That's a really good shout out. That. Did you say you have one more? I think I have two more. And then I have some honorable.
Yeah, I have one more. This pick, like almost for me, goes beyond Trek. This pick is what got me into Star Trek. Kind of tipped me with a fence. I'm gonna go with Star Trek 2009. And the more that I think about it, I mentioned in the beginning of the show, I'm like, kind of in a slow spot in my rewatch. Maybe I need to watch this to kind of get into that comfort mood and rekindle some drive. But yeah, this pick for me, it's my ultimate comfort food. No matter what, I can rewatch it 1,000 times. I won't get tired of it. I love it so much. To me, it has everything. And it not like it takes me back to I watched it for the first time in my hometown, in my rinky-dink old movie theater, and it's just comfortable.
It makes that's I knew that was going to get mentioned by you for all those reasons. I know that about you. There's something else I'm kind of tempted to ask you about. I know might be endearing for people to hear. It was also the first date you had with your now wife.
Yes, that's why I said goes beyond Trek. Yes. So it's like special to my heart.
Yes.
So yeah, it's
So that's an obvious like clear number one for you. That makes all the sense in the world. And I had it on my list as an honorable mention. Like it's something that definitely came to mind for me. I've watched that movie, I think 100 times at least in the 10 years it's been out. I can't get enough of it. I love it. It always kind of it does its job for me. Like as somebody like me who didn't like step into Star Trek through that door, what it did for me and what I think it did for a lot of people was it reignited like Star Trek. Like and that's the thing I think it does best, and that's what it set out to do is, and I've mentioned this many times as well, that when I watch Star Trek chronologically, I always kind of finish with the end of Voyager and Nemesis, and then I get to 09, and it's like the shot of adrenaline where everything feels fresh and new again and exciting. Simple things like beaming out of a dangerous situation and jumping to warp and like the most like basic level Star Trek stuff is cool again in a way that it hasn't been cool in ever, like since the very beginning. That the fact that it succeeds at that level makes it endlessly rewatchable for me because it always kind of reinvigorates my love of Trek when sometimes I need it by the end of a rewatch of going through the whole thing. It sets me up to want to go back and do it again.
Yeah.
If I end with that. So that's a definite classic choice that was on my radar too, but I knew, like I said, it was going to be a high up pick for you.
Yeah.
So, I'll finish up with, I have two more things that I want to mention. Enterprise, my choice for Enterprise was, and this is like, if I want to binge a little bit, like if I want to, like I've done this before, I'll come home on like a Friday night sometimes and I'll say, I love Enterprise. How am I going to fill a few hours? I can do all of season 3 in 2 days. I could do that. Or more realistically, what I do is I'll watch the 3-episode Vulcan arc, which I think is kind of like the peak of Enterprise in a big picture kind of way. That's 3 episodes. It's like 2 hours of stuff edited down. So that's an easy one for me because I've done it. I've definitely gone back and like said tonight I'm watching the Vulcan arc. It's got the added benefit of it's got our good friend Jim Morehouse of Trek Ranks in it.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yep.
His piece of canon.
The Awakening.
Is there in Awakening.
Yep.
So I always like seeing him on screen. But that's kind of like like I said, the sort of like Enterprise's potential kind of all being realized in one tight little package, those 3 episodes. So if I'm mentioning Enterprise, it would be that. And outside of Star Trek 4, which like I said is sort of the first thing that came to mind for me, right there with it for me is an episode of Deep Space Nine, and it's Trials and Tribulations. To me is like ultimate comfort Star Trek. It's a love letter to the original series. It's so like perfectly pitched. It's clearly obviously fan service, but it's so heartfelt and coming from the right place and not over the top in any way, other than all the good ways, I guess. That it's like endlessly charming and never gets old. That's another one that it doesn't matter how many times I've seen it. It doesn't matter how recently I saw it. If I stumble into it, I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah.
It's got so many great little lines in it, great little exchanges, pieces of dialogue. I love things like Worf and Odo are over on Space Station K7 looking for the guy, and they're kind of just plopped down at the bar waiting for the guy to come to them. And O'Brien and Bashir walk in, and they're like, "Oh, you guys get to sit here at the bar and wait for him to come to you." And we're like going through deck by deck on the Enterprise. Like just the camaraderie of the crew is on like full display there. Cisco and Dax talking about Kirk and Spock.
Yeah, the visual effects in that episode are just
so good.
So good.
It's perfect. So it's like awe-inspiring for all that stuff. Like the fact that they were able to put Sisko and Kirk like in the same space and have shared dialogue at the very end of the episode, and put O'Brien in the line of officers that are getting dressed down by Kirk for the bar fight. Like it's got all that stuff. It's got the great stuff about Worf not wanting to talk about the fact that they are Klingons, believe it or not, without the forehead ridges. It's not something they talk about with outsiders, and talking about that the Klingons, exterminated the Tribbles. Like he tells that story, and there's so much witty dialogue and so much cool Star Trek stuff in it that it's never going to get old for me. So that's kind of, along with the Voyage Home, I kind of intentionally wanted to start with the Voyage Home and then kind of end with Trials and Tribulations as my 2 easy picks.
Yeah. Well, you crushed it with that pick. That's I'll have to agree. That might be the ultimate, I guess.
I challenge you. That's one if you want to reinvigorate.
Next to 2009, maybe.
That's what you need to do. You need to watch 09.
Yep.
Except that what that's going to make you want to do is watch TOS. Sure.
Yes.
That's what both of those would probably do.
Yep.
That agrees with Trials and Tribulations, and from Deep Space Nine, he's mentioning Move Along Home, which I don't know if I agree with. If you're looking for corniness and fun, maybe. That's a gutsy pick. I'd love to have you on sometime to talk about Move Along Home. Little Green Men is a great pick. I love that episode, and it never gets old. Armand Bashir, the Bond.
Oh, kind of great! I love that episode.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
Take Me Out to the Holosuite, the baseball episode's really cool. So Deep Space Nine's got a lot of cool picks. Little Green Men's another great one, though. Like that's one that similarly to Trials and Tribulations. If I walk into a room and I see that on, I'm plopping down. Like there's no way I'm walking away from that. I love that. That's the Roswell Ferengi episode. That's got so much great humor in it and cool, innovative, outside the box sort of concept that only Deep Space Nine I think would be gutsy enough to do. I have. Do you have any like honorable episodes that kind of sort of come to mind just in having this conversation?
Just speaking of Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
There is a comfort food episode that I will test Bill to see if he can see which episode I'm thinking about that was on my honorable mentions.
Okay.
It was a Deep Space Nine episode. Let's see if I can give you any hints. It's just a one line. It takes it, and when I watch that episode, and when I watch that episode, it's he without sin.
Let me who was without sin.
Yeah. It's a silly like weather rise episode, but there's this great corniness. I take comfort in corniness if you guys haven't figured that out. There's this great corny line between Worf and Dax that is just so perfect.
It is. So. It's got some. If that's your jam, if you like the corny element of it, and if you really respond to like laughing at that kind of stuff, that's a great episode for you. Because it's full of that stuff. It's ridiculous. So I'm not surprised that one kind of popped into your head. For me, an episode I'm surprised you didn't mention that I really do like, and I've watched a lot over the years, and it's not one that's like way high up on my rankings or anything, but it's comfortable. That episode's so terrible.
It is. I don't know why it's comfortable episode for me.
For me, is Resolutions from Voyager. There's another one where there's a lot of like just casual stuff happening in it with Janeway and Chakotay. And I've gone on this rant about Voyager, and I think one of the more underrated elements of Voyager is this Janeway and Chakotay dynamic that I'm not going to get into right now. You can watch just about any episode where we're talking about Voyager, and you can hear my rant about Janeway and Chakotay and why I like it, why I like the dynamic that they have. But that episode sort of establishes that and like lays the groundwork for that subtle stuff. So I that's one that I have an easy time going back to.
That again, we kind of talked about this throughout the whole episode, but that kind of goes back the day to day, like day to day. There, Chakotay is just making beds and he's doing his normal
bathtubs.
Bathtubs.
It is, and that's definitely. I think that's something that maybe I had it in mind for lessons, but I think that became a bigger talking point than I maybe expected coming into this conversation. That casualness is such a big player in making an episode easy to revisit, interesting to go back to. Rob mentioned Shattered as a Voyager episode. That's comfortable. It's got the nostalgia of revisiting past episodes and past characters. Seska's in it. That's got some cool stuff in it that has definitely grown on me over the years. That nostalgia factor, it plays really well in a rewatch. Like if you've gone through the show, like worked your way up to that in the 7th season, kind of going back and revisiting all that old stuff, definitely kind of works. And Rob also mentioned His Way as a Deep Space Nine episode, which is the kind of the Dick Fontaine introduction and the beginning of the Odo Kira thing actually happening and not just being on the back burner. So there's been a lot of casualness.
Yes,
I think is something, and a lot of comedy. Like romantic comedy is a common theme. Comedy generally is something that I think we've all kind of touched on here, and that casualness I think are critical elements that I think you and I definitely share, and I think even Thad and Rob, a lot of their picks, or maybe they're agreeing with our picks, at least sort of go to show that they're big elements for this. Trying to think what else. I also, just real briefly, have a list. Trouble with Tribbles kind of goes hand. Trials and Tribulations. It's another one that kind of never gets old for me. And Yesterday's Enterprise is another one that's kind of like Doomsday Machine. It's not a light episode by any heavy stuff, but it's another one that, like the Doomsday Machine, is just endlessly rewatchable. It's another one that I could watch, every week for the rest of my life. Like I said with Doomsday Machine, it never gets old. It's well paced and got all the stuff I love about Star Trek in one package. So they're there. And 2009 for sure, like we kind of already mentioned, is another one that I, added to my list. Is sort of undeniable for me. Yeah. So we've covered a lot of episodes between us and throwing episodes out there in the conversation. There's been a lot of representation from all the shows. Rob just threw out there Magnificent Frankie. That's a great episode. That's another one with a lot of comedy in it.
Yeah, comedy.
A lot of like witty dialogue and outside the box stuff happening in it. Iggy Pop as a Vorta, like it's fun. The Way of the Warrior from Thad is endlessly rewatchable. That's a big time episode. I can't tell you the number of times I watched that, especially in my younger years. That first couple of years that was new, like while Deep Space Nine was still in the air, I think I wore out that tape. I watched that a lot. Couldn't get enough of it. So you guys in the chat, if you have any other ones you want to throw out there, now would be a good time. I think we're gonna be ready to wrap up. We've covered a lot of episodes, and I love the fact that I think we spent time on all the shows. We covered the gamut from TOS to Discovery and a couple of the movies along the way, which I think is appropriate. I think they all offer something.
Except the animated series.
No animated series. Yet again. How's that happening? It never gets mentioned. Accidentally or on purpose, I'm not sure.
You guys see the judge on that one?
If you guys have an animated episode, we're happy to hear it. I think a few people in the Twitter conversation introduced this topic a couple days ago. There were a couple animated episodes, to be fair. They got thrown out there in that conversation. I know Yesteryear got picked a couple times.
Oh, yeah.
So it's there are people out there who dig the animated series. Yeah. So, what are we talking about next week? Are we ready to talk about that? Like, do we have?
I don't think. Talk about that off air? I think we need to talk about that off air to finalize what we're talking about. But
yes, we'll do that. Last couple things from Thad. He's got the next phase. He's got Genesis TOS or TNG episodes. interesting picks. The next phase is definitely really rewatchable. That's a fun one. Rowan, Geordi, thinking they're dead.
Yeah.
Genesis is a cool like alien homage, I guess. I guess McFadden talks a lot about. She directed that episode, which is kind of cool. A lot of monster stuff, a lot of cool makeup effects, and Regeneration, the Borg episode. I definitely have gone back to that. That's a rewatchable episode, the Enterprise Borg episode. So, yep. I think the real answer to this is all of it. Like at the end of the day, especially for me, I mean, I rewatch all of it all the time. So
everything.
If I'm being honest, it's what's that?
Everything. Every episode is a
yes. It's all comfort food. Yep. Star Trek in general is comfort food. Yep. Star Trek in general is like the quintessential comfort food TV, if you ask me.
Yes.
He likes the Jihad, the episode from the animated series. This is Thad. He says he likes the Jihad because it's basically a D&D story. Interesting. He can't claim to be a D&D player. I've never delved into that world. But that's cool.
Yep.
Any podcasts? Anything you want to throw out there before we wrap up?
I've been trying to get through. There's a few shore leave episodes that I've been listening to specifically about STLV.
Why are you listening to those?
That's all I'll mention about that. And maybe something we'll talk about down the road a little bit. But yeah, that's all I'll mention. What about you?
I listened to some stuff about Calypso from The Edge, the live show that they did. What else? I'm looking at my podcast feeds. Because it's been a couple weeks. I think I mentioned it before. A couple of the podcasts, especially, published a couple panels from. I know there was like East Comic-Con that Brandon Jim Mutala went to, and I think the Trek Geeks went to, and they had a couple of, I want to say at least one panel, maybe two, that they recorded and put up as podcasts about Star Trek podcasting and like social media kind of stuff.
Yep.
I definitely listened to that a couple weeks ago. That was really good. Thad just dropped an episode of Delta Flyer about Threshold, which is definitely on my queue. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about that. Any conversation about Threshold, is can't miss podcast. Thad's asking if we will be seen at Vegas next year. Maybe, perhaps. Conversations are ongoing. We'll see. That's the hope. Stay tuned. Touch base with us, and we'll be happy to share as things hopefully play out. Cool, Thad.
Awesome.
I think I may remember that. I said it was a couple weeks ago. But yeah, that's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, so there's a ton of good Star Trek podcast stuff out there as almost too much to keep up with.
Yeah.
The last couple of Trek Ranks episodes have been really good. The Voyager, yes, Voyager Guilty Pleasures. I love the Guilty Pleasures episodes that he does. They're always cool conversations, and I think I mentioned last time we were on the Titles episode was really cool. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, let's wrap this thing up. You guys know the drill. The discussion doesn't have to stop here, and it hasn't. This past week, it's had great discussion on Twitter, obviously, a little on Discord as well. So keep that up. You guys are doing awesome because you guys make the show. We'll be back next week with another great and fun topic to talk about. Probably won't be on the animated series, but no promises.
You never know. One of these days, maybe.
I think we're gonna wrap it up. I'll probably be on tomorrow morning with some STO.
Cool.
And then see you guys next week.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Thanks for watching.
Yep. Thanks for watching, guys.